The crying lasted nearly 5 minutes. It rose and fell like someone was trying to hold back their fear. Every time it grew louder, it was suddenly muffled again, as though a hand had been pressed over the person's mouth. I climbed out of bed and cracked my door open. The hallway was empty. Soft yellow lights glowed along the walls. Everything looked perfectly normal. The crying stopped. I stood there for another minute, listening. Nothing. I slowly closed my door. The next morning, I mentioned it over breakfast. Did anyone hear someone crying last night? The table went quiet. Martha stopped buttering her toast. Eleanor stared into her coffee. Frank cleared his throat. Finally, Harold looked at me. What time? Midnight. His smile disappeared. He quietly folded his napkin. You should stay in your room after dark. I frowned. Why? He looked around the dining room before answering. Because some questions are safer unanswered. Martha forced a laugh. Oh, Harold's always trying to scare the newcomers. But her laugh sounded fake. Very fake. The conversation ended there. Later that afternoon, I noticed something odd. Harold wasn't in the garden. He wasn't at lunch. He wasn't in the library. I asked one of the nurses where he was. She smiled politely. Mr. Henderson is resting today. That seemed reasonable. Still, something about her smile bothered me. It never reached her eyes. That evening, after dinner, I decided to visit Harold's room. I knocked twice. No answer. The door wasn't completely closed. I gently pushed it open. The room was spotless. The bed had been made so tightly it looked untouched. His favorite sweater was gone. His photographs were gone. Even the little pocket watch he never left behind had disappeared. It looked less like someone lived there, and more like the room had been prepared for a brand new resident. I stepped into the hallway. A young housekeeper was changing the sheets in the room across from Harold's. Excuse me, I whispered. Where's Mr. Henderson? She froze. For just a second. Then she smiled. Oh, he checked out. Checked out? When? This morning. I saw him at dinner yesterday. I'm sorry. She quickly turned away and continued making the bed. I walked back downstairs feeling uneasy. Nobody leaves a retirement home without saying goodbye. Not Harold. He would have told us. That night I called Daniel. Harold disappeared. He probably moved. He didn't? You don't know that. I know him. Daniel sighed. Mom, people leave those places all the time. But no one saw him leave. You're worrying yourself. Melissa came onto the phone. Sadie, are you settling in? I think so. She sounded cheerful. I'm glad. Did Daniel tell you someone disappeared? She paused. No. It's just one resident. I'm sure his family moved him. But try not to think about it so much. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. We ended the call. That night. Midnight came again. The crying returned. This time, it sounded closer. Much closer. I looked through the peephole. No one. The crying continued. Slowly. Very slowly. It moved down the hallway, as though someone was being dragged. My heart pounded. I almost opened the door. Instead, I waited. Several minutes later, silence. The next morning, I decided to explore. Rose Haven was enormous. Surely I had simply missed part of the building. I wandered through several wings I'd never visited. Everything looked beautiful. Bright paintings, fresh flowers, comfortable chairs, happy residents. Then I reached a hallway marked Authorized Personnel. Only a heavy wooden door blocked the entrance. As I turned away, Evelyn, the activities director, suddenly appeared behind me. Oh, she smiled warmly. You startled me. I'm sorry. I was just looking around. She gently placed her hand on my shoulder. Residents aren't allowed beyond this point. Why not? It's simply where we keep medical supplies. She smiled again. But there's nothing interesting back there. For some reason, that answer only made me more curious. Over the next week, I paid closer attention. Certain things no longer seemed normal. Every evening at exactly 11:30. Several members of the staff quietly disappeared. The night nurses took over. The daytime nurses were never seen again until morning. I also noticed another strange pattern. Once every 4 weeks, one resident stopped appearing. No announcements, no farewells. Their room would simply be empty the next morning. Whenever anyone asked where they'd gone, the answer was always the same. They checked out. No one ever questioned it, except me. One rainy afternoon, I found Frank sitting alone in the library. He looked nervous. I sat beside him. "Can I ask you something?" He nodded. "Have people really disappeared here?" He stared out the window for so long I thought he hadn't heard me. Finally, he whispered, "Don't ask questions." "So it's true?" "I didn't say that." "But you didn't deny it." His hands began shaking. "My roommate disappeared last year." I leaned closer. "What happened?" He woke me up. Said someone was knocking. I told him to ignore it. He answered anyway. Frank swallowed hard. I never saw him again. A chill ran through me. "Did you tell anyone?" "They told me I'd imagined it." "And after a while—" He looked ashamed. I started wondering if maybe I had. Before I could ask another question, Evelyn walked into the library. The moment she saw us talking, she smiled. "Frank, it's almost time for music hour." Frank stood immediately. Without another word, he walked away, almost like a frightened child. That night, I couldn't sleep. At exactly 11:58, I was already sitting on the edge of my bed, waiting. The digital clock changed, 11:59, then 12 o'clock. The crying began instantly. This time I refused to ignore it. I quietly opened my door. The hallway was empty. The sound echoed faintly from somewhere deeper inside the building. I slipped into my slippers and followed it. The farther I walked, the quieter everything became. No humming air conditioner, no ticking clocks, no distant televisions, only the soft crying. I reached the hallway marked "Authorized Personnel Only." The wooden door was standing slightly open. I was certain it had been locked before. The crying came from beyond it. My hands trembled as I pushed the door wider. The hallway behind it was completely different from the rest of Rosehaven. The wallpaper was old. The lights were dim. The carpet was faded. The air smelled damp. It felt ancient, as though this part of the building had been forgotten. I continued walking. The crying grew louder. At the end of the hallway stood a single black door. Warm light glowed beneath it. I was only a few steps away when I heard voices. Several people were coming. Panic shot through me. I looked around desperately. Just beside the hallway stood a large stone column, wide enough to hide behind. I pressed myself against it. Seconds later, the black door slowly opened. 5 members of the nursing staff stepped into the hallway, but they were no longer dressed in white uniforms. Each wore a long black hooded cloak. Their faces were hidden beneath deep hoods. No one spoke. No one looked at one another. They walked in perfect silence, carrying brass candle holders whose flames somehow never flickered. After they disappeared around the corner, I waited until the sound of their footsteps faded away. Then I crept toward the open door. The smell hit me first. Burned wax, smoke, and something metallic, like old blood. My stomach tightened. I looked inside. Candles, dozens of them, had burned almost completely down, leaving pools of hardened wax across the stone floor. Ancient symbols had been carved into the floor beneath a heavy iron table. An elderly man lay strapped to it with thick leather restraints around his wrists, ankles, and chest. His face was bruised. His lips were cracked. His breathing was shallow. Then his eyelids fluttered open. His cloudy eyes found mine. For one brief second, hope flashed across his face. He struggled against the straps with what little strength he had left. His voice came out as barely more than a whisper. "Please." Then louder. "Run?" His eyes widened with terror as he stared past me. "They're coming back." He took one desperate breath. "Run." A cold voice echoed from somewhere behind me. I was wondering when you'd become curious, Mrs. Williams. Slowly, I turned around.